I'm Julie Mason. Pete Buttigieg is the 19th Secretary of Transportation. He tweets at Secretary Pete. Mr. Secretary, welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. There's a lot going on right now, and
oh my God,
keeping us busy, which is just how we like it.
Now, so a big announcement this morning about $400 million in funding for ports. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, one thing that's happened in the last year with all of the issues we've seen on our supply chains is I think Americans better understand just how important our ports are, even if you don't live anywhere near a port. You know, if our ports fall behind, you feel that, you know, all the way in my Indiana hometown in terms of the economic effects. And so we know that we've got to invest more. It was a big part of the president's bipartisan infrastructure law, and it's a big part of my department's agenda. So today we're putting out a call for applications for $450 million. It's by far the biggest investment we've ever made in this program. There's more where that came from. And we're really looking forward to seeing the applications that come in, and we'll get those dollars moving later this year. It's everything from adding capacity to fixing things around berths or integrating rail onto ports so that we can move those goods, those containers more efficiently. Fundamentally, the things we need to do to get the goods that we count on every day. Because if you, if you just look at anything that you count on, the clothes you're wearing, the device in your pocket, a pretty good chance it got here in a container through one of America's ports.
And those ships are getting so huge, ports have to get deeper and wider to accommodate them.
That's right. As they have widened the Panama Canal and increased just technologically what's possible on board, the ships today are absolutely massive. I was out in the ports of LA and Long Beach a few weeks ago. That one port complex accounts for about 40% of the containers coming in, and these are not our parents' or grandparents' idea of a cargo ship. They are cities on the sea, and it takes a lot of capacity to unload them. You know, the virtue of it, of course, is that you can move huge amounts of goods on a single vessel. But on the land side, dealing with all those containers that come in all at once, moving them around properly, being able to accommodate just the depth, the dredging that is needed to get that ship into the port. Bridges, in some cases, have to be replaced or moved because the ship won't fit under them. They're that big. And those are the kinds of upgrades we've got to make here in the 2020s if we want America to be able to compete for the rest of this century.
You also met recently with some motorcycle organizations, and I was concerned. Are you joining a gang? What's happening?
You know, I once rode a motorcycle, and it did not end well. But for the people who do, it's incredibly important that we support their safety. And a lot of that's awareness, making sure that drivers are conscious, drivers of cars are conscious of what it means to share the road with motorcycles, and a lot of other steps that are part of our roadway safety strategy. So we got together with safety advocates. They've got a lot of good ideas, the things that we can do to make sure that we reduce the number of injuries and fatalities that happen on our roadways, especially for motorcyclists.
You're also looking to expand EV stations. And, you know, we were learning earlier on the show about an app, a free app. If you drive an electric vehicle, you can find out where all the charging stations are because they're not super obvious. And I think you would like to make them more like gas stations.
Yeah, look, it's got to be universal. It's got to be user-friendly. And because this is such a young, new market, we just haven't quite gotten there yet. In some ways, it reminds me of the days when they hadn't quite settled whether video tapes were going to be VHS or whether they were going to be beta. And I know I'm dating myself for probably half the audience by even bringing that up. But we're kind of that way now with charging technology. There's a lot of networks that you can only charge up if you're a member of that particular network. But we need to evolve towards something that is a little more like gas stations, where if you're hitting the road, even if it's a long trip, you never think, you know, when you're going on a road trip, you never think, gee, are there gas stations on the interstate system between where I live and where I'm going? You know that there will be. We're moving in the same direction with chargers. The president wants there to be 500,000 chargers at least in a network across the country. And we're starting with a grant program that's going to work with states to get the backbone in place across our highways. Then we'll move on to what's called community charging. But as you pointed out, the reason an app like that can be useful is there's more charging out there today than you would realize. It's just that we got to fill in the blanks and fill in the gaps.
I mean, I wouldn't even know where to find one at this moment, a charging station. I'm probably surrounded by them here in D.C.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was with the President's Climate Advisor at Union Station, where there's a fast charger that they put in right there in the parking garage. You'll find them at the store a lot of the time. There's actually a former gas station just over the state line in Maryland, where the owner decided to look to the future and convert to an electric charging station there. And another thing a lot of folks don't realize if you're new to EVs, frankly, I didn't realize this until we got a plug-in hybrid vehicle. And right now we have since becoming a dad, we got a plug-in minivan. So it runs about, we're van. Never thought I'd be a van guy. It happens almost inevitably when you get the kiddos. But, the way it works is it runs electric the first 30 miles or so, and then it flips over to gas. But my point is, the charging infrastructure that we have for that is just an ordinary plug in the wall. You can plug it in the garage, and a lot of people don't know that. So, of course, when we're talking about the highways, we're talking about fast chargers, more sophisticated equipment that can charge up the vehicle in a matter of minutes. But to charge a vehicle overnight, a lot of times all you need is an extension cable and a plug if you're fortunate enough to have a garage in a single-family home. In a city, in a multifamily dwelling, a little more complicated than that, and that's part of what we're going to use this grant funding to address.
Are you confident that those plugs will stay standardized?
So they're increasingly moving toward a standard called CCS, Combined Charging Station, and Combined Charging System. And you're going to see that especially for these fast chargers. There's also probably going to be a need for adapters that in the kind of medium term to help us get to where you have that confidence. But right now, you do need to know what's out there and to check not only is there a charging station, but does it fit my vehicle?
What's coming up for the infrastructure program?
Well, there's so much going on. Right now, today we're announcing that port program that you mentioned. Very excited about that. There's going to be more where that came from this week. We're rolling out, actually underway now, with the bridge and the highway funding, which is the bread and butter of a lot of our work here at the department, because that alone runs into the tens of billions of dollars, and that touches every state and territory in the country. Then we're standing up whole new programs, things that just didn't exist before, a resilience program, because what we're seeing is a lot of places where a so-called 500-year flood is happening every other year. And if your road is getting washed out every other year, it probably doesn't make sense to put it back the exact way it was every single time it gets washed out. So we've got to move things, improve things, fortify things. That's why the resilience funding and program is going to be important. Look for that to come out later on this year. And a lot of other things that we think are going to make a big difference around safety. We issued our roadway safety strategy. We're putting billions of dollars behind that strategy because it's just not acceptable to lose the lives that we lose on our roadways every day. It's not unusual now. It doesn't happen every single year, but it's not unusual to go a year where there are 0 deaths on our airlines. We should have equally high expectations for our roadways, but we're a long way from that. We've got to act more aggressively to make it happen.
There appears to be some tension emerging between the federal government, your agency in particular, and states that don't want to be told how to spend the infrastructure money. How are you finessing that?
Well, there's a lot of autonomy for the states. So the lion's share of the funding that we put out, ultimately it's up to the states to decide how to use it. Now, we have guardrails. This is federal taxpayer money. We've got a very high standard about how it's going to be spent. It's got to be accountable. It's got to be above board, of course. And so we have those kinds of standards. But the states need to pick it up and run with it. And they come up with some really good ideas a lot of the time. Our concern is to make sure that they're engaging their own communities appropriately and that they're meeting federal standards. Now, we also have direct grant programs where we fund local communities. They come straight to us with their ideas and their visions. And through a competitive process, we select the programs that we think are going to make the biggest difference. We're going to continue doing both, working through the states and working with local communities. And I do think we can hit the right balance. We're not going to agree on everything, and we don't believe we have all the answers here in Washington. We've just got to make sure that everybody feels confident that the dollars are being spent to a high standard wherever they live.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. You can find him on Twitter at Secretary Pete. Mr. Secretary, thank you. Great to talk to you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you. Take care.